England, Poole Harbour, a female osprey on its nest, a nest that it's been building for the last few days since it returned from Western Africa. Now, I'm 58 years old, and when I was a kid, ospreys were extraordinarily rare birds. They existed in Scotland. They were ferociously and necessarily protected by the RSPB. A few breeding sites, there was enormous secrecy about it. Egg collectors would try and raid their nests every year to steal the eggs. It was a constant game of cat and mouse. One of the most famous nests at Loch Garten, the RSPB reserve at Loch Garten, on one occasion I remember someone went to the tree with a chainsaw and attempted to cut the nesting tree down, and they had to make last minute repairs. Yep. I mean, an extraordinary tale. They returned, having become extinct as a breeding species at the turn of the last century in the mid 1950s. And of course, by the time I got into birds in the 70s, there was still only a handful of pairs there. I mean, globally, I've got a map here of their distribution, and you can see that they are very widely distributed all across North America, South America, southern parts of Africa, northern and southern Asia. The only continent, apart from Antarctica, where they're unlikely to occur, of course, that they're missing from is Australasia, Australia and New Zealand. So globally, an enormously successful species and also very, very abundant. But I've also got another map here. This is a map of osprey distribution from 2011. It's from the BTO Atlas. And you can see how well they've been faring since those days of the mid 1950s. They're back into much of Scotland, southern Scotland. We know they're nesting in Wales, of course. The little red splodge in central England are those birds that have been reintroduced to Rutland water. What's missing from that map is, of course, a little red dot down in Poole Harbour, and that's what we're hoping for later this year. If the male returns and these birds lay eggs and rear young, it will be an astonishing achievement. Not something I thought I'd see in my lifetime. So keep your eyes peeled. Ospreys of Poole Harbour. Oh dear, we've been having a few technical issues.
Apparently the sound went.
Is the sound back on?
Can you hear us? We hope you can.
So we were talking about marsh tits, weren't we?
We were.
Cool.
We were. Shall I play the call again? Just in case. Have a listen.
Right.
Have a listen to this.
Right. We have another call, the pichu, pichu, pichu call. That's the one I hear more frequently than that little bit of sort of songy call.
Very. I quite like it. Of course, this is the sound of the day from Sound Approach UK. I was saying that marsh tits are very easily confused with willow tits. Of course, they're looking very similar. They've got the shiny black cup, they're all breasts. In fact, scientists only found out that they were separate species in 1897. So yeah, but it's quite interesting. We've got marsh tits. If you look at the brain of a marsh tit, they've got enlarged hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that remembers things. So marsh tit will actually take seeds and hoard them away for a rainy day, which is unusual for tits.
Yeah, but that's what they do here. We get them on the feeder here, and they spend all winter just taking seed away and hiding it, not eating it. Other birds there going hungry because the marsh tit's hiding it.
But maybe that's why we have to refill our feeders every 2 days.
And also, we've got sunflowers cropping up all around the garden because they don't remember where they put all of their food.
So doing gardening for us is quite useful.
But while we're on Birdsong, go on.
While we are on Birdsong, exactly. So, Mark Constantine at Sound Approach has written a fabulous article about Yakuta. Now, I spent a little while trying to pronounce this word right. It's a Spanish word. It is the art of walking in the morning with the purpose of going outside and listening to birds first thing.
When you said Spanish, you meant Swedish.
Swedish, sorry, yes I did. I meant it's a Swedish word. It's a Swedish word, Yakuta. So this is the way you pronounce it, or the way that I interpret it anyway. So you go out between, I think, Ascension Day, and then towards Midsummer Day as well. So it's about 40 days after Easter. You go out with the dawn chorus at its peak. And you bathe in the sound of the songbirds and the music and everything. And doesn't it sound delightful?
It does, and it's a mental well-being thing, isn't it? Because Japanese do tree bathing, Shirin Yoku, and they go into the forest and get a sense of it. Should we try it? Let's do a bit of birdsong bathing.
In fact, Sound Approach UK have done something for us. If we don't have gardens, they put out a song of a beautiful cuckoo, a half-an-hour recording of birdsong that you can bathe in at your leisure in your own home. So we're going to do a bit of songbird bathing.
Go on then.
Song bathing. Let's do this now.
Yeah. It's blissful, isn't it?
It's gorgeous.
I'm not very good at being blissful for very long.
No, you get fidgety, don't you? I quite like a bit of blissfulness. I can just sit here and listen for hours.
I can't take the bliss for too long. But I think that, in a real life situation, just lying down, in your front room, with the windows closed to stop. Well, there's not much traffic as it is at the moment, is there really? And then just bathing in that birdsong in any environment could be extremely therapeutic. And people have actually found that by playing birdsong in hospitals, it increases rates of healing.
It does, of course, because it helps our mental health, and in doing so, helps our physical health as well. So the importance of going out and connecting with nature, listening to that birdsong, taking it all in, and listening to recordings if you can in your homes as well. So important. So important.
Do the quiz.
Let's do it.
Okay, Phil Barnett, polymath extraordinaire, at SquinancyWalk1 on Twitter, has been sending these abstract geometric designs. Now, we started with a goldfinch. Yesterday we had small tortoiseshell. What about this one? We've made them more difficult. This is a species which occurs in the UK. What can I say as a clue? Well, I'm not going to give a clue at the moment. I'll give you a clue a little bit later on. But it's a UK species I think which you can see in June every summer in many parts of the south of England.
It's difficult.
It's a tricky one.
I don't think I'd get this, to be totally honest. I mean, I'm not very good at the visual. I'm not going to say anything, but I find this very challenging if I didn't know the answer.
Okay, well, we'll give a clue halfway through. Now, when we started doing these, we were looking at some of the wild flowers which were growing in the garden: lesser celandine, wood anemone, primrose. Just over here behind us is another extraordinary type of plant, which We did a little bit of pre-recording yesterday evening because it's quite tricky to get the camera off the tripod, get it down and go back again. Take a look at this. It's the remarkable cuckoo pint. We've been looking at some of the plants, wildflowers that grow naturally in the garden here. Things like lesser celandine, wood anemone, primrose, some I planted, snake's head fritillary. But this is one of my favourites. This is the cuckoo pint, or lords and ladies. Now, initially in spring, it just pushes up these waxy green leaves. And then at the last minute, this extraordinary flower appears. Look at that. It's remarkable. And it's got a remarkable set of names. I've always called it lords and ladies or cuckoo pint, but other people call it snake's head, adder's root, arum, wild arum, arum lily. Well, it's a member of the arum lily family, so that's okay. Lords and ladies I've mentioned. Devils and angels, cows and bulls, soldiers' ditties, priest pintle, Adam and Eve, bobbins, naked girls, naked boys, starch root, wake robin, friar's cowl, sonsie, give us your hand, Jack in the pulpit, and cheese and toast. Now, some of those names, Adam and Eve, soldiers' ditties, priest pintle, naked girls, naked boys, there's a sexual connotation going on there. And that's because people have always thought that this, the spadix, as we know it, looks a little bit like human male genitalia, and this, the spathe, like human female genitalia. So that's how it got those rather saucy names. But the flower is remarkable. How does it get pollination done? Well, the spadix here smells of feces. It doesn't smell at the moment because it's not ripe, and that will attract flies. But then it does something even better than smell of feces. It warms up so that it's 15 degrees centigrade higher in temperature than the rest of the plant. It keeps those insects warm whilst they do their work. And here's one that I've dissected so we can see what happens. So here's the spadix, it started to wither. That would have been smelling of poo and very warm, attracting the flies, which go down here into this chamber at the bottom of the plant. Once they go down here, they're kept in by this frill of hairs here. So they then walk over the male part of the plant, picking up the pollen, go down to the bottom where they transfer it to the female part of the plant, and fertilisation takes place. They then manage to climb back out and they go and do the same in another cuckoo pint. This one, as you can see, has already been fertilised and the berries are beginning to develop already. This material soon withers, so do the leaves, and within the space of a few weeks you're just left with a stalk with some waxy green berries on, which go bright red by the summer. And that's a good thing to do, because that is a warning coloration, because this plant is extraordinarily toxic. Now, you would have to eat a lot of it to do yourself any harm, and that's highly unlikely, because were you to taste the berries, not something that I've tried, they produce a burning sensation in the mouth. And in fact, more people go to casualty through plant poisoning through eating these berries than in any other plant toxin that we have in the UK. So what a thing. Extraordinary names, remarkable method of pollinizing, and it's growing here in the garden. Successful group, you get them all around the world, lots of different species as well. Sometimes you get the leaves with purple blotches on, it's a slightly different variety. Cuckoo pint, or priest pintle. I might, naked boy, naked girls. I might change what I call this plant actually, go for something a little bit more risque. What a plant.
I love that.
What a plant.
Who'd have thought? I'd never have known.
I know. It's just remarkable that system of, pollinating, by having that essentially like a little dungeon, which the flies are trapped in until they do the pollination, and then they're allowed out to go and pollinate other plants. And the berries as well. I mean, they're very bright and striking, and sometimes in the garden they add a real splash of colour at a time of year when there isn't much of that bright red colour there in the middle of the summer. But yeah, extraordinarily toxic stuff. Amazing.
Well, today we are joined by a very fabulous guest. We are joined by Gail Armstrong, who's part of the North Lancashire Bat Group. She's here to give us lots of amazing bat information and to show us some live bats as well. So hi Gail, how are you?
Hello.
How are you doing?
Yeah, good.
How are you finding your isolation?
I'm in a beautiful part of the world, so it's not really a big hardship.
Jolly good. Well, let's take a little video that Gail has made earlier about some of the care that she puts into rehabilitating the bats that she's got. These are animals that have obviously come in as rescues, and the mission is to get them back into the wild. But sometimes they become educational ambassadors. Here's Gail.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Gail, and I'm a bat conservationist, but I also do some bat care and rehabilitation. Now this is the room where I take care of bats. Bats come in for a variety of reasons, and they're looked after here until they're ready to be released back to the wild. There's always a few that don't actually get well enough to be released, and if they're settled in captivity, then we keep them under licence to use as ambassadors for their species. Now I've got a de Benton's bat here, and he came in, sadly he'd been roosting in a shed, and he managed to get his foot squashed by the door opening. Because the de Benton's is a water bat, snatches his food, insects from the surface of the water using his feet, the injury meant he wouldn't have survived in the wild. So he stays with me in captivity. This little guy's a liceless bat. He came in with an injured thumb and a little bit underweight, and the injury to his thumb means he can't climb, and he's a tree bat, so he would be at a big disadvantage. Now he lives with me as well, and he's a real good ambassador for his species. There we are. Now he's eating a waxworm, which is a big treat for him. He only gets this when he's on camera. Now at the moment I'm looking after this little girl. She's a soprano pipistrelle bat, and she managed to get stuck on parcel tape and couldn't get off. We freed her from that using a bit of olive oil, checked everything is still okay, gave her a couple of days rest, and now I'm ready to check whether she can fly well enough to be released back to the wild. So now I'm out in my flight cage that's built in my garden. This is where I test fly bats to make sure that they're ready for release. I've got a net here in case I need to catch her again, but hopefully she will fly for a short time and then land. And I'm going to put a bat detector on so that we can listen to her high-pitched calls as she's flying. And I think that's a yes.
That's great. Absolutely fantastic. The care, the dedication, the specialist knowledge, the extraordinary amount of time, effort and endeavour that goes into rehabilitating a bat like that is just amazing, absolutely amazing. Great to think that that little bat will be going back into the wild. Now, we're going to go back to Gail now. And Gail, the first question, well, something not a question actually, but some people have been on our social media saying these bats are not pets, are they? And they're very obviously not pets at all.
No, definitely not. Bats belong in the wild, absolutely. But sometimes they get into trouble, they need a bit of help. And I do that. Any bats that I keep long term, I need a licence from England to keep them, because it's illegal to have bats in captivity otherwise.
And how long had you had that little bat before it got to that stage that it was flying in your release pen or pre-release pen, and then you can and get it back into the wild?
It's only been with me about 5 days, and its little wings were stuck together with this parcel tape. A little bit of olive oil got that off, and then it's just a case of letting her clean herself up. And also she was a little bit thin, so she grabbed that chance. Mealworms is what we feed them in captivity, and she's grabbed that chance and eaten as much as she could. So she's up to weight now, and as soon as I can, even in lockdown, I am allowed to do that, because that's an essential journey. She's got to go back where she came from, and I won't meet anyone else on the way, so I'll be fine.
And that Leisler's bat that you had, do you know, I've never seen a Leisler's bat. We used to call them lesser noctules. I think that's what they were written down in the Observer Book of British Mammals or something. But they're like the same family as a noctule, but a bit smaller, but quite infrequent to see.
They're pretty in Scotland, but they're common on the Isle of Man and Ireland. And of course, in Ireland and the Isle of Man, they don't have the noctule bat. So there's I've never seen one before in Lancashire. This little guy got into trouble, and he's the only record for Lancashire. But yet the habitat is right here, so we don't really know. That's one of the great things about bats, is there's still such a lot we don't know. Do you want to have a look at him?
Yeah, we'd love to.
I'd love to get him. Yeah, fantastic animal. Chance to see a Leisler's. What they were also called hairy armed bats. Hairy winged bats.
There he is.
Oh, look.
The old-fashioned name was the hairy armed bat because they've got hair growing up. Hair growing up. Let me show you. He's complaining a little bit. I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but he has a covering of hair growing up his forearm.
Look at that.
Fantastic. We've got some questions.
Beautiful animal. Yes, we have lots of questions coming in for you, Gail. Lots of people are loving the bats. So the first question, Jane from Facebook, why do they hang upside down and not perch like birds?
Okay, well, they don't all hang upside down. A lot of them squeeze into crevices, but they're all upside down as they take off. And that's just how they've evolved. And the reason for that is as they spread their wings to let go, they can get more energy. I'm not supposed to wave my arms. They can get more energy into the takeoff by hanging by their toes and then dropping to glide away. So it's a different way of flying.
So they'd struggle, would they, to kind of take off if they were perched normally, because I'm assuming the structure of their wings?
Yeah, so some bats can take off from the ground, strong ones, and some bats even land on the ground to forage, to pick up beetles and things. But basically they find it much easier because they get more energy into the glide away.
Oh, amazing. So Marion on Facebook says, apart from seeing a bat, how do I know that there are any bats in my area?
Oh, right. Well, if bats are used in buildings, the most obvious thing you see is their little drop-ins that they do as they leave their roost at night. And that's they look a little bit like mouse drop-ins. They're the size of a grain of rice and they're black. And if you rub those, they crumble to dust because all bats have eaten is insects. So that's the obvious sign that bats are using a building to roost. Other than that, it is just going out at sunset and watching for them. And of course, a bat detector makes that much easier.
And that actually leads me on to the next question. What is the best family bat detector? Is there one that's robust and not too fragile? And what height should you put the bat box at? Okay. All bat there's such a lot of bat detectors now, and the best family one, if you're just going on family walks, is just really the cheapest you can find, because they all have a microphone to pick up the bats at high-pitched calls and convert it down into a series of clicks. So if you're not too worried about identifying bats by their echolocation calls, then the one like this is this is an old one actually that's probably not made anymore, but the updated version of this, it's got an on-off and a tuner, and you have to tune it in to the best frequency for the bat that you're listening to. So don't spend a lot of money. That you can now get this type of thing that will go into a mobile phone or a tablet, this little red thing, and it is just a very sophisticated microphone to pick up the calls. And of course, the advantage of that is it displays the sonograms on your screen. You can record them, and it does even try to decide what species you're listening to, but it doesn't always get it right.
And what about bat boxes, Gail? Obviously, many people put up bird boxes in their garden, but we shouldn't forget about the bats, because they will take to those boxes if we put them up.
It is always worth putting a bat box up on a tree or on the gable of your house. There's lots of designs, and the best advice I can give for putting a bat box up is to put it where you've seen bats flying. because bats are always prospecting for new sites. They need a lot of sites throughout the year, and they need to move between sites. And so the more they've got, the more successful they'll be. So if you've seen bats flying in an area and you put up a box, it's like something new on their map. So they will go in and investigate it. And hopefully, if it's a good box, find it quite quickly.
Is there a particular height to put these boxes at?
Not really, away from danger. So if you've got a cat, don't put it near to a place where a cat could get near to swipe at the bats. But 3 to 4 meters is plenty, usually.
Brilliant. Okay.
Got one more?
We do. We have one more. So is there a way to identify bats without using a bat detector, i.e. watching their flight patterns?
If you're at home, there's a great leaflet that the Bat Conservation Trust produced that's just for that purpose. What bat is this? And it shows the flight path of the various common species that you're likely to see over your garden. So if you see a small bat and it's not quite dark and it's got a very fast and jerky flight, that's going to be one of the pipistrelle bats. And then there are others on the leaflet that with the different flight paths.
Fantastic.
Gail, thanks ever so much for joining us and
much.
showing us those fantastic bats. And keep up the hard work. And it is hard work, and everyone appreciates how much you do to try and keep these little guys back in the wild. It's absolutely brilliant.
Thank you so much, Gail.
Thanks, Gail. And stay safe. Stay safe.
Look after yourself.
You can follow Gail on Twitter at GailBatLady and learn a lot more about what she's up to. And another thing I should put you on to is hashtag BatChat, which is a podcast that's produced by the Bat Conservation Trust. So hashtag BatChat. And there's a whole catalogue of these, a whole library of these podcasts, which you can listen to if you want to learn more about bats. Now, Lucy McRobert, her of 365 Days Wild, has come up with a writing competition for both young and old, I think, with some fantastic prizes. And I think the winners are going to be published in a prestigious magazine. Here's Lucy to tell us a little bit more about this writing competition.
Hi everyone, my name's Lucy McCubbin and I've teamed up with some of my favourite nature writers and champions to try and find the UK's next top wildlife storyteller. It's called the Nature on Your Doorstep competition, and we want kids and teenagers to send us their short stories inspired by the wildlife right outside of their homes. It could be up in the sky, it could be in your garden, it could be on your street, whatever wildlife works for you. We've got 3 age categories, each with some amazing prizes, including binoculars, experience days, books, vouchers, healthy hampers, and most importantly, all of our winners will be published in BBC Wildlife magazine. How incredible is that? Check out 365dayswild.com for more information and to find out how to take part, or tune in on Friday when Stephen Moss, who is one of our judges, will be chatting to Megan and Chris. Thank you very much and stay safe.
Nature writing,
Brilliant competition.
great genre of work coming out. Lots of people doing nature writing at the moment, so that's something.
Lots of people sending it anything to get involved with.
Yeah.
Sure.
Look, we gave you this. We're going to give you a clue now. This is the quiz of the day. This is one of Phil Barnett's geometric abstract reductions of a UK species. The clue I'm going to give you is it's a plant. Yeah, I'm not an animal today. This is a plant. A very exotic looking plant, as you can see. Okay, we'll give the answer in a few minutes time. So yesterday I was sat in the front room and Alan Snook, who's a man I know from the Hampshire Ornithological Society, sent me this photograph. It's a photograph of a carrion crow. Spot what's different about the crow. It's got yellow legs and feet. A crow with yellow legs and feet. Now, initially, Alan thought it's been walking in something. It's been walking in some pale mud or something like that. But then he's seen the bird on subsequent days after it's been raining. So it's clear that this individual has got permanently yellow legs and feet. I sent the photographs off to Paul Stancliffe from the British Trust of Ornithology. And like me, when I looked at it in detail, I sort of thought the feet look a bit puffy. They look a bit swollen. And Paul thought that this might be the result of an infection, like those infections that some of our passerine birds get, things like chaffinches. And it could be caused by mites or something else, but we don't really know. Neither the BTO, nor Alan, nor myself knows what's going on here. If anyone's ever seen a crow with yellow feet, let us know. And if you ever found out why it had yellow feet, Let us equally know
Even
that.
better,
Be interesting to know.
Fascinating. So yesterday we got sent a very unusual clip of a unexpected mammal, a hare, swimming. Have a look at this. Okay. Just a technical difficulty there. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about swimming and unexpected mammals. Very interestingly, we don't expect many mammals can swim. If you live by the sea, then you might be more adept in the water. And maybe it's your environment which might dictate whether you're a good swimmer or not. So for example, camels live in the desert. You wouldn't expect them to be very avid swimmers. However, we now know that if you were to take a camel to water, they are very willing to get in. And in fact, they are very, very good swimmers.
Good swimmers.
Bizarre, considering they don't live really very close to water and they've got no reason to cross it. So perhaps environment isn't such a big thing. Kangaroos even are good swimmers. They use their tails to help paddle and direct themselves. So that's interesting.
There is something about kangaroo locomotion which is unusual, though, isn't there? What is it?
They can't move backwards.
Oh, of course, yeah.
They can't move backwards. They can't move backwards, but they can swim. They use their tail to help direct them in the water. So it's not about environment. Perhaps it's about weight. But then when you think of that, you think of the largest, most heaviest land mammal. Think of the African elephant. It can weigh up to 6,000 kilograms, but it can swim. The longest distance of swimming for an African elephant was 50 kilometers. So clearly, it's not about weight either. So I'm kind of head scratching here. How about if you're covered in armour, for example? You've got a heavy coat, you've got a shell or something. Armadillos, exactly this. So armadillos can take in gulps of air, enlarging their stomach, enlarging their intestines, and then they're very good swimmers as well. They can swim. They're very good swimmers. What about flying? Well, we've just been talking about bats. Well, actually, bats are very good swimmers, and when you put them in the water, it looks like they're doing the butterfly stroke that us humans do, the structure of their wings.
Okay, so which animals can't
very
swim?
Interesting. Wow. So all of these studies, there were studies done in the 1950s and 60s, which were very, very, very unethical.
So they just got animals and chucked them in the water?
They did, yeah, particularly smaller mammals. I mean, it'd be a bit difficult to put an elephant in a tank. But yes, that's exactly what they did, but all these data were ruled out because of the unethical nature of it. However, today, what we're doing is we're using computers to try and understand how mammals can swim, unlikely mammal swimming. Now, mammals, in comparison to their body size, have quite good lungs. We're very buoyant. We've got a lot of fat reserves that help us with buoyancy. So we think that, in fact, all mammals, every single mammal, has the capacity to swim. But looking at these computer data that suggests how good or bad a mammal might be at swimming, there are two groups of animals which we don't think should be very good, and this is the interesting part.
Well, okay, so let me just run through this, because people often say that cats can't swim, but we know that's not true.
But we can. Tigers very good at swimming.
Of course they are. Yeah,
they don't like
jaguar
swim
all the time.
Exactly. Our domestic cats don't like it, but they can.
But they can swim. Another thing I've heard is hedgehogs can't swim, but we know that hedgehogs can swim.
They have their noses up like this, and they paddle. Yeah. Good swimmers.
Those are the things in the UK that people always say they can't swim, but they can.
Yeah. So,
and we've just seen the hare.
We've seen the well, yeah.
We haven't seen the hare swim, but there's a hare swimming.
We will show you that at some point. There's a hare swimming. And so the two things that should not be able to swim are giraffes, because think of their anatomy. Yeah. However, it isn't impossible that they couldn't. So they can, if their nose is towards the surface, it is possible that they can float. If you've got the capacity to float, you've got the capacity to swim. The last one is the interesting thing.
Go on.
Great apes.
Oh, yes, of course.
We shouldn't be able to swim, interestingly. So, of course, chimpanzees, orangutans. There was a study done, an unethical study again, that showed that they actually can, if they really need to. They don't like it at all. But based on our anatomy, we are actually the group of animals that shouldn't be able to swim. But, of course, we've overcome that. We've got amazing free divers. We've got divers. We've got, Tom Daly. He's, proving that wrong, isn't he?
Plenty of humans proving it wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
But sometimes when people are rehabilitating chimpanzees and they can't go back into the wild because of the complex social structure of aggression and everything, they put them on islands and they never come off the island.
No.
So they don't like swimming.
But there's a difference, isn't it, between not liking it and not being able to do it. And we shouldn't physiologically be able to do it, which is fascinating.
Okay.
Anyway, moving on from unusual swimmers.
Unusual swimmers. Okay. You get some questions ready. I'm going to
Yes.
do the quiz reveal. So here it is. Okay. Firstly, we've got to see if anyone got this. So it was a UK species of plant. Did anyone get it?
I think the clue helped.
Oh,
The
did it?
clue helped. So on Facebook, we've got Morgan, Jill, Beth, Daryl, Terry, Helen, Trish. Twitter, we've got Amy, Jim, Michelle, and Michael. Ellen says, one of your t-shirts, Chris. YouTube, Hannah, Oliver got it as well. So well done to everyone who got that right. I find this very
Yeah, it's quite tricky. This is a reduced bee orchid flower, the flower of the bee orchid. And the bee orchid is one of our off-risk species of orchids where the complex flowers mimic an insect, but sometimes not so much in their coloration and structure, but in terms of a pheromone, a scent which the plant gives off to attract a male insect, male bees, which come to these orchids. We also have fly orchid in the UK, which attracts a type of another type of insect. The males come, they attempt to copulate with the labellum, the lower or inverted lower petal. I'm going to get complicated. Orchid flowers are quite complicated. They attempt to copulate with the plant, and in doing so, they attach a couple of pollen sacs to their heads, which they then fly off, and when they repeat the exercise on another plant, they affect cross-pollination. In the UK, however, not entirely sure that we have the right bee species, and I think most of our bee orchids are actually pollinated by ants. So yeah, slightly trickier one from Phil today. We're going to have another difficult one tomorrow.
That was tricky. So we've still got some bat questions coming in as well, so we can kind of do our best to answer those without fail. How would you get into bat conservation?
Joining the Bat Conservation Trust, of course.
That's the best thing to do.
Excellent. They produce great literature, and they've got a great magazine. Young Bat Worker comes out. I was looking at a copy yesterday afternoon. Actually, I was having a big sort out of magazines in the library, and the Young Bat Worker is really good. And then they organise events, and you can get in touch with your local bat group as well. And I just did this a few years ago. I was so into bats. I did my own periodic table of British bats, like that. I like the idea of ordering things.
How did you do that? How did you structure this?
These are related species you see here, and then there are a couple of vagrants down the bottom here, and then the residents here, and these are the bats in their family groups. Not too difficult to do for bats, because there aren't that many species in the UK.
Only you would ever think about doing a periodic table to kind of
I've
structure.
done orchids, dragonflies, and damselflies, butterflies, bats, and one other one. I can't remember what it was. Anyway,
that must be pretty expensive. I can't.
Yeah, that's what you do of an afternoon when you've got other things you should be doing.
Yeah.
One last question.
How do we encourage bats? Can you plant something? Well, there's lots of things you can do to encourage bats. Of course, you want to encourage insects into your garden. So any plants that are going to really encourage those insects coming in is going to be really beneficial. And of course, the bat boxes as well, because as Dale said, if there's a new environment, bats are very good at mapping out their environment through echolocation. So if there's a change in that environment, a change in their map, they are going to be very inquisitive and go and check it out. So put up some bat boxes, that will encourage them in, but also encourage as many insects into your gardens as possible as well.
And get out there in the early evening, particularly at this time of year, and see if you can see those bats. And
even when it's light, you'll see them. You'll see them at the moment.
Yeah, get onto those online auction sites and get yourself a bat detector. More fun cannot be had than if you've got a bat detector of an evening. A bat detector and a glass of something,
Always helps.
It's a glass of something. We're going to leave you with slow-mo poodles. There's been a dearth of these. Everyone's been on the social media saying we're missing the slow-mo poodles. If you want to, well, you can't because of self-isolation, but the poodles are not always in slow motion, And at about 6:20 this morning, they weren't in slow motion. They were jumping up and down on my head. We'll see you tomorrow. Who have we got coming up tomorrow?
Tomorrow we have the wonderful Kate Bradbury.
Kate Bradbury. Great
wildlife gardening. Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Before you get slow-mo.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Real life poodle.
To wave you off is a real life poodle. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.